Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Iori Folani. Yeah, still, thank God it's Friday. Serious business on the offing. The multidimensional poverty index as an issue, it's now been unveiled in Abuja yesterday. And the sorry statistics, they're useful for, I imagine they must be indispensable for developmental purposes, but the sorry statistics is that 2 in every 3 Nigerians is poor, and not just poor, but poor on more than one dimension. So now that we have it, out there, statistics is what it is. And so we have one statistic saying that CHUKWU is, in these terms, the most affected, the poorest, and in these terms, it is said that Ondo State is the least poor. I'm not talking about rich now. We're talking about poor and the most poor and the least poor. Okay, so what does all of this mean for for developmental purposes? How we should live, the challenges we continue to face, what the children are going through. If 2 in every 3 Nigerian qualifies to be called poor on more than one dimension, let's find out from the expert what indeed this portends for us. One of our experts today is Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, and former DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And the other expert is Mr. Johnson CHUKWU, CEO, COWRY Asset Management Limited. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you very much for making time for us. Okay.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Good pleasure to be with you.
Okay. Then. Good morning. So let me start off with let me go with you first, Mr. CHUKWU. 2 out of every 3 Nigerian is poor by this statistical study on not just one level, because we've looked at all the levels. First of all, is this expected or unexpected? A revelation from the statistics, which was conducted, as a joint effort by the National Bureau of Statistics, National Social Safety Nets Coordinating Office, United Nations Development Program, United Nations Children's Fund, and Oxford Poverty and Human Development International. So I've even heard from NECA that the results are incontestable. What does this portend for us and our developmental goals?
Thank you, Yuri, once again for having us. What we saw in that report is who we are, is the reality of our situation. What they have done is basically bring together a number of disparate factors that we have treated in silos and treated them as if they are not related. Take, for instance, when you talk about the father, 0 and 17 have about 23. Two-thirds of them are in poverty. Of course, we know, and we know Nigeria has it. Among the things they measured is students' access to education. And remember that if you're looking at the multidimensional poverty that they measured, you're looking at access to food, access to healthcare, access to education, access to sanitary facilities. And these are factors that if the parents don't have access to, the children will not have access to. But children's case is even worsened by the fact that among the issues measured is their access to education. And because if you look at Nigeria, particularly some segments of the country, you realize that a lot of children, Nigeria has the highest concentration of out-of-school children. They said in that report that about 29% of should be in school and not in school. And that Nigerian children, of that 94% of people who didn't go to school are in that this report is a summation of our situation. So there's nothing to take away from it. There's nothing to add to it. That's the reality of the situation. For me, the issue should be this has created an opportunity for policymakers to reduce this level of poverty in the country.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Johnson, for starting off. Dr. Muda Yusuf, how did we arrive here? I mean, it's people are saying that the figures are sound, solid. NECA said you can't contest them. How did we arrive here? Is it policy? Is it bad policies or a lack of correct implementation, because we have serious problems. Look at the floods, look at, hunger, look at high prices, inflation, and all of that. So how did we arrive here with the figures that we have? Dr.
Thank you very much. And good morning. Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you now.
So good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to my dear friend.
Good morning,
Johnson CHUKWU.
Yes.
Now, of course, this is not new, actually. The figures only have gone to validate the experience that you already have. I mean, just look around you, even within your immediate environment. You feel the reality of poverty, across the country, anywhere you go. And just as the reporter said, of course, there are variabilities, geographical variabilities, and all of that. But the situation, of course, has been extremely bad. Another way to look at this, before I go to what brought us here, is the fact that when you look at what we call the SDG goals, Sustainable Development Goals, the SDG goals focus essentially on the kind of parameters or metrics that this report is also focusing on. And our performance, we have 17 SDG goals. Our performance in about 15 of them are extremely very bad. These are developmental indicators. And some of the indicators, because develop human being, that is what it's all about. Then when you look at the Nigerian economy, the Nigerian economy is the biggest economy on the continent.
Okay.
$100 billion US. But when you look at our ranking in Human Development Index, we are number 32 in Africa. Yet we are number 1 in terms of the size of our economy. You can see how lopsided things are with us as a country. So these are very fundamental issues which are now reflecting in the kind of data, the social statistics that we are beginning to see. Well, a number of factors we can attribute to this, and these factors are not new. These are things that have been in place for over some years. First is the economic factor. If your economy is not growing the way it should grow, especially when you compare it to population growth, invariably you end up in this kind of situation. So if the economy, by virtue of either policy or productivity or something, is not performing optimally, because you need to create the wealth in order to improve the welfare of the people. So the performance of the economy generally is very, very key. Then secondly, apart from the economy performing optimally, that's what we call inclusive growth of an economy. That is an economy that carries everybody along. An economy that addresses issues of income inequality. You can be growing, just as I said, we are the largest economy on the continent, but we are number 32 in terms of Human Development Index. So that shows that even the level of growth we have achieved, there's an issue of distribution of inequality. How inclusive is the growth? So we have a major issue with inclusiveness, which is also reflecting in the high level of poverty and disparity. Then we have the issue of the structure of government spending. Now, Johnson CHUKWU alluded quite rightly to the issue of our social spending in education, in health, all of these things. It is the structure of government spending that should address them. These are things that are in the purview of the public sector. This is not something that the private sector can deliver. The private sector is to generate the wealth. Government is to extract value from the private sector and use it to address all these vulnerabilities in the country, particularly education and health. So the structure of government spending, whether at the local government level, at the state government level, at the federal government level, has not been focused to address these fundamental issues that have been raised in the report.
Okay.
Then there is the issue of the productivity in the economy. We have over 40 million MSMEs. If they are doing well, we will not be in this kind of situation. But there's a major issue with productivity. They are struggling with power. They are struggling with transportation. They are struggling with all sorts of things, which is slowing down productivity in the economy. So if you have that kind of thing, even the small businesses that are supposed in their own space to generate some wealth and improve their living conditions are not able to do so. So these are some of the factors. These are just the economic factors. We have the macroeconomic factors. We have social factors, which we will address as we progress.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you very much, Doctor. Hello, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Doctor, when we were speaking just now, Dr. Muda Yusuf, he spoke about an economy that carries everyone along, being noted more by its absence than by anything else. And also the fact that, yeah, much has always been made about the potential of Nigeria, the biggest, population, therefore, the potential for business is phenomenal. Yet, as he was saying in the, when it comes to the Human Development Index, it says we're number 32 from being number 1 in terms of population. And so when you combine that with the whole matter about carrying everyone along, I imagine the politicians are going to be telling us very shortly what indeed they want to do or they intend to do. The expression poverty alleviation has been known to us. But in the light of the results of this study, has anything happened? Anything meaningful happen? If this poverty alleviation, as Dr. Muda Yusuf was saying, that it's not exactly unknown, but it's good now that we have this confirmation. But the problem now is that what has been the success, if any, of all those poverty alleviation programs that we've been hearing about?
Thank you once again. If you look at the fact that the government, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs said only about a week ago that the government has spent about $700 million in conditional cash transfers to about 1.9 million households. And we are talking of an increase in multidimensional poverty. We are talking of an increase in the number of people who are out of school. We are talking of the absence of food to families. We are talking of absence of health care. We are talking of absence of sanitary facilities. We are talking of absence of basic human needs, security, and what have you. And the government said they are spending about 700 million. It then means that money, we look at school feeding, including the amount they claim they spent during the COVID lockdown on school feeding when schools were not in place. Then you can either consider this as sleaze on the part of government or misplacement of expenditure. But clearly, the approach that the government has adopted to reduce poverty has not worked. And it then means that it's time for us to review our strategy to deal with poverty in the country. And this, because of the broadness of this report, it has given government a wonderful template to work with. And I'll give you an instance, one of which is the issue of childhood poverty, where zero 17, that 65 of them are living, 67, we have the highest number of out-of-school children. What we also said, like I said earlier, that 94% of those who didn't have education are living in abject poverty. But beyond that, the issues around availability of health care around the neighborhoods. In the 80s, the governments then were focused on making sure that you have a minimum maximum distance you can have to travel before you get access to a good healthcare facility. And similarly, we perhaps will phase out a couple of the archaic and outdated pushing for alternative energy, charcoal and things that the government can do. Today, we sit on gas. We literally sit on gas as a country. And there's no reason why we should not be able to every nook and cranny of this country that people can cook with gas, which is clean energy. There's no reason why the government at local government levels should not be able to establish healthcare facilities, even its health centers, in all the communities and all the wards in this country. Well, this, like I said, this gives the government a template. The current template we have is not effective. What we're using has failed to achieve any results. But the clincher will be that any government that wants to eradicate poverty must do what China did. You must create an economic environment where people be gainfully employed, where they will earn income. You must create an economic environment, social environment where people acquire education, where both parents are educated. And because an educated mother, an educated father, will certainly ensure that their children are also educated. And because with education, you're going to reduce poverty significantly. Then if you give people access to education, give people an opportunity to be gainfully employed, they earn income, they will have to feed their families, they will take care of basic needs. And the government will play its own part of the contract between the government and the citizens. Government has failed. Consistency, amenities, security, we talk about it. People have access to quality education, free. The country is supposed to have free basic education in the country. But how many people have access to quality, free basic education? Even where that is notionally said to be free, there are charges and fees that are imposed on parents that may not be called school fees, which many parents in the rural areas cannot afford, and they take away their children from schools. We must make it as a criminal offense for any parent to withhold a child from going to school. But for that to work, the government must also make sure that schools are free, schools are attractive, and that schools are close to where people live, so that they don't have to commute long distances to go and have basic education. These are some of the things that are reducing the level of poverty. We must divert the resources we're wasting on conditional cash transfer when there's no condition attached. Elsewhere, where you have conditional cash transfer, is attached to a condition which could mean that your child must be in school for you to get access to this handout. But when we didn't do that, so we're just giving out a kind of freebies to some families, and that is not having any impact on reducing poverty.
Indeed. All right. Thank you, Johnson. Let me bring in Mr. Bamidele, who has called in from Abuja on this subject matter. Good morning to you, Bamidele.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, this is AYOBAMIDELE Victor from Abuja.
Okay, Ayo.
Yes, the actual thing is that the issue of Nigerian poverty level is not a new thing. You understand? Because actually, two things are driving, two factors are driving this poverty level rate now in Nigeria. The first one is unemployment. And these are cumulative issues. You understand? The first one is unemployment. Then the issue of insecurity that is affecting a section and a sector of Nigerian economy, which is a very critical one. The rural dwellers, their jobs are being taken away. They are being pushed into unemployment market. People participating in food production. One other thing that is actually affecting the inflation of Nigerian inflation rate now is the issue of food cost. The cost of food in this country is going up every day, and it is because of the effect of banditry, which is taking the job of the people at the rural dwellers away. So I listened to you when you spoke about the fact that our politicians have not been talking about the specific things they're going to do in order to solve the problem of poverty rate. They have been talking about it, because once you address unemployment and you address insecurity, automatically a lot of people will be taken out of poverty in this country.
Thank you.
That is my own view about this.
Thank you.
The issue of education and stuff like that, we must do because if you are looking at the segmentization of this thing now, the northern part of Nigeria is more affected by this than the southern part. And that is because of the fact that the Almajiri system in the north, there must be a specific approach to solving that particular problem. The out-of-school pupils and children in that side of the country is too high. That is my contribution this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. AYOBAMIDELE. Coming back to you, Dr. Mode Yusuf, Mr. Johnson CHUKWU spoke about this report having provided government with a marvelous worksheet, a planning sheet, for instance, because so much information is in there. So I was wondering, what are your ideas of what government could do with this kind of a document that's been put together by all these experts, as I was saying, all of it coordinated by the National Bureau of Statistics, including the safety nets, National Social Safety Net, UNDP, United Nations Children Fund, and Oxford Poverty and Human Development International. So what could government, what would be your idea of what government could do with this? Because in addition to all that you've been saying, I was wondering, well, we just heard AYOBAMIDELE speak about unemployment, but insecurity and then corruption itself. Are these also contributory factors? Carry on, sir.
Yes. The way out of, first of all, let me say that this report has not said anything new. Of course, maybe some details as to the spread and all of that, but essentially, the report has not said anything new.
Okay.
And apart from the report, our daily experience also tells us that things are extremely very bad. That is very obvious to everybody. The last speaker that called in talked about unemployment. Every family knows that this is a very big problem, which goes across all levels of education or age groups. These are fundamental issues. And I come back to the issue of the economy. Because if you don't position the economy well, it is extremely difficult to eradicate poverty.
Dr. Yusuf, I beg your pardon. Could I interrupt you briefly, please? Because Emmanuel called in from OTUKPO, and I want to get his contribution to the program. Good morning to you, Mr. Emmanuel.
Good morning, Uncle Yuri.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
I greet your guest.
Yes.
This figure that is coming from the National Bureau of Statistics is not surprising, because this is not rocket science. If you live among the people, you understand what I'm saying. The poverty is palpable. And this is as a result of successive failure of government. The government we have had so far in Nigeria for a long time now, they have not found the need to do the right thing. And it's very unfortunate. They keep handing baton of failure to each other. This is the reason why we are now saying that this 2023 election, we should interrogate all those coming to rule Nigeria. It's not a question of you come and give us beautiful talk, you dramatize, but you don't have concrete ideas to do specific things. They must give us specific ideas this time around.
Okay.
Insecurity, how are you going to fix it? Food scarcity, how are you going to fix it? This palpable poverty and hopelessness in Nigeria, how are you going to fix it? We were full of hope when Buhari was coming in. But we noticed that the man has failed us completely. I particularly, I'm so disappointed that this man is an all-round failure. And we cannot afford to have another person like him.
Well,
so Nigerians,
we don't censor people, but still, it is what it is. An all-round failure. It's an opinion. We're not going to argue with you about that, but let's just leave that there. I had to interrupt you, Dr. Yusuf, going into it, but the extent of the problem, as you said, experts, economists, and people, there's nothing new here, apart from the fact that the validation, the verification now is scientific. So beyond the way you feel, now they've done this scientific statistical study, and they know for sure what we have. It's almost overwhelming that Nigeria, the largest economy in the country, 2 in every 3 is poor. It's almost overwhelming, and it sort of sets a good tone to listen to what the politicians are going to be saying about this, because in addition to informing government right now, it also is informing the political aspirants, and it is informing the rest of us as to the extent of the problem. Please continue, sir. Dr. Yusuf.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Well, just to continue from where I stopped, you see, we need to identify the causes in order to know what the solutions or what the way forward or the pathways should be. There's a macroeconomic dimension to this problem. Because for any economy to prosper, and when the economy prospers, and the economy is inclusive, you reduce poverty. Your macroeconomic environment must be right. Some of your callers have talked about inflation. One of the biggest drivers of inflation, of poverty, is inflation. Because it erodes the little income, the value of the little income that the average Nigerian has. Uncle Yori, you know that there's a time in this country with 10,000 naira, you are buying a brand new car. We are not talking of several centuries ago.
Yes.
With 6,000 people are buying brand new cars. What was the exchange rate maybe 10, 20 years ago? Look at other countries. Even if they had some changes in the exchange rate, it's not by this kind of margin. Check out exchange rate in US, in UK, in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, and all of that. The variation is just between maybe 5, 10, 15% over the last 20, 30 years.
I'm sorry, Dr. Yusuf. The audio went quite poorly. So we're going to take a break at this stage. Mr. Johnson CHUKWU, please stay with us along with Dr. Muda Yusuf. We'll be right back.
The launch of the country's multidimensional poverty index. The report shows 133 million people, representing 63% of Nigeria's population, are multidimensionally poor. 86 million people, representing 65%, live in the north, while nearly 47 million, representing 35%, are in the south. The multidimensionally poor levels vary across states, with Ondo having the lowest rate of 27%, while the highest is Sokoto at 91%.
The Multidimensional Poverty Index survey is arguably one of the largest surveys to be undertaken by MBS, with the largest sample size of 56,610 households that we selected across 109 senatorial districts in 36 states and federal capital of the Federation.
The president, who is represented by the chief of staff, says the data gives an in-depth insight into the state of poverty in the country and will definitely help in shaping policies aimed at poverty alleviation.
Nigeria is, of course, as we know, a large and diverse country. Using the disaggregation to show the vast range on the level of poverty, we can see.
The study also included children, and it showed 67.5% of children aged 0 to 17 are multidimensionally poor. It revealed over half of poor children lack the intellectual stimulation that is necessary for early childhood development.
This report provides a more comprehensive view of poverty by not only revealing who is poor, but in what way and to what degree of intensity.
turning it into a very practical resource for addressing the problem of poverty in all its forms and dimensions.
Poverty is a nationwide problem in Nigeria, but its nature is different in different parts of the country. So intervention should really be tailored to the deprivation profile of each state, if not lower, making them our interventions of support efficient and of higher impact.
The Multidimensional Poverty Index captures the percentage of households in a country deprived along 3 dimensions of health, education, and living standards. And the just included survey in Nigeria, however, included a new dimension of work and shocks. Lara Folayo, TVC News, Abuja.
Okay, and welcome back. That report went out yesterday, the day that the report was unveiled, and with us Dr. Muda Yusuf and Mr. Johnson CHUKWU, both economic experts. Let me come over to you, Johnson, if I may. Dr. Yusuf was talking about the macroeconomic aspects of this situation. What are those, and what can be done about it?
Okay, I think, he was speaking about the issue of inflation, which is a price level. And there's what you call, if you look at the inflation figure, and he was trying to explain that when the value of your currency continues to erode, that means you can no longer buy the same quantity of goods and services you used to buy.
Exactly.
Unless your income is increasing at the rate at which inflation is increasing, then your standard of living will continue to deteriorate. And that deterioration could push you into poverty. There's what we call in economics misery index. And misery index is a combination of inflation rate and unemployment. And Nigeria has suffered severe unemployment. The last report, which was the fourth quarter of 2020, the unemployment rate was about 33.3%. Youth unemployment was 5%. If you look at inflation and you look at 2 years of inflation figure, in October 2021, inflation figure was 15.2. Inflation figure had moved again from to 21.09%. And remember, the inflation figure is cumulative. It simply means if the price level was 100 naira in 2020, in October 2020, in October 2021, it had moved to 115 naira 99 kobo. And then the increment of 21% was based on 115 naira for that increment. So you are talking of an increment that was a cumulative of about 37% of the price level. So if, for instance, you were earning 100 naira in 2020, that 100 naira can no longer buy you 100 naira worth of good. It can 67%, 66% of what you used to buy as at that time. So if you spread it across your consumption, you will realize that you can no longer afford about a third of what you used to afford with your income, unless your income has increased. And many households have not seen increment in their income. So what matters? We've seen increasing level of unemployment. Unemployment does not necessarily only mean white collar employment. We've seen further displacement of farmers. We've seen people who used to live in their farms and work in their farms who now live in IDP camps. They have become unemployed. Yeah. And then that simply means they no longer have a source of income to take care of themselves. So that's why the misery index has further worsened. So what the report we are seeing today is that the issue of misery index has also been extended to include access to education. And like I said earlier, we've seen situations where schools, we have 29% of children who should be in school are out of school. And we have the highest concentration of what they call out-of-school children globally, despite the fact that our population is about the 8th in the world. India has more than 1.4 million people. They don't have the number, absolutely in absolute terms, of out-of-school children as we have. So these are factors that are macro at the macroeconomic level. When you talk about macroeconomic stability, you're talking about inflation rate, you're talking about unemployment rate. I've talked about those two, and those two are what they call that you sum up to make what they call the misery index to show how miserable the citizens are. Exactly. And that's a manifestation of what we're seeing in this report. And then if you look at, again, the exchange rate, I mean, we've seen Naira depreciate over the past 1 year by almost 100% in the parallel market. So these are having direct impact on those who even have some consumption that are imported into the country. So reality is that we're living with high level of unemployment. Cumulatively over the past 2 years, unemployment rate is about 37%. Even if you look at the worst case, which is the food inflation, you realize that the food inflation figure, 17.76% in October 2021, and then about 24.72%, 23.72% in October 2022. If you sum up those two, you are talking about more than 40% food inflation. Most families, their consumption, their household expenditure is on food. So if the cost of food has increased over the past 2 years by more than 40%, it simply means a household, an average Nigerian household can only afford 40 billion for the food they used to eat.
Quite a graphic way of putting it. Exactly, quite a graphic way of putting it. Well, thank you, Johnson. Thank you also, Reverend Dominic in ALIMOSHO, for holding on all that while. Please go ahead now, sir.
Good morning to Muda and Johnson.
Yes.
I want to say, thank God I'm not an economist. The reason is this. Every time, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Every time I interact with economists, Nigeria expert economists, their answers is always painful to me. Let me tell you the reason. This English of micro and micro doesn't make sense. Now, let me give you one example. Let's start. Somebody mentioned Buhari here. But this issue must start from bottom to up, not up down. Since over 2 months now, there's commission of projects in River State. I want to be emphatic. In River State, there's commission of projects every day in River State for over 2-3 months now. Does it bother you? There's no way you have had that they're going to commission a certain water, what we call pure water industry in River State. And I want to challenge the economists there who are advancing government. We missed this problem. We missed this issue of economic growth since 1999. Let me put that 99. When we say government has no business in business, how could we say government has no business in business? Government has a way to get money from bank. Bank can give them money. Multinational can give them money to build that industry and hand over to private sector. But we say that government has no business in business. We see governors fly to Abuja every day with private jets. We see governors go abroad every day with private jets. We see governors who run around all the whole Nigeria and outside world with private jets. Do you know the cost? Because the government has no business in business. There's too much money, nothing to do with it. So if you start from bottom, you will go up. We have borrowed billions and billions of traders. I've not had one day, especially our brothers from the north. Textile mill, I'm a textile worker. I work in textile before I went to school. Textile mill can take thousands of skilled and unskilled workers. I've not had the government say we are borrowing money to revive Kaduna textile mill. We are borrowing money to revive Kaduna textile mill. Nothing like industry. It's road. If you work road and nobody has to work on it, how does somebody alive to work on the road if you have no food? The issue is that the economists in your studio are advancing Nigeria wrongly. Governments must have business must partake in creating industries because they have the ability to get money from back and multinational, not for only individuals. What should individuals do in Nigeria today? You build an industry, you put power, you put water. There's nothing individual can do. If government did not go back to say we can build industry, we refer to China, we refer to India. How are they prosperous? Every skilled and unskilled man can have a job to do. But in Nigeria here, governors build government house, government school, government roads. What kind of rubbish is this?
Okay, Reverend Dominic. Quite frankly, there's a sense in which a lot of Nigerians will understand your, seeming anger at the situation. It's quite frustrating. Dr. Mudalawa, how would you respond to, Reverend Dominic's, shall we say, frustrated position that I'm not sure the economists are advising government well? We have two economists on the program.
Well, I can feel his frustration. Most of us are as frustrated as he is. He's not alone in that frustration. But the reality is that the responsibility of government is to create an enabling environment. That is what government has a responsibility to do. And all the things we have been saying is about government creating an enabling environment. Enabling environment in terms of infrastructure, I think what some governors are doing is excellent. Ultimately, even if we are not getting immediate results, it will make doing business in those locations much easier. Even the farmers on their farms, it will be easier for them to move their product from their farms to the market. That is a whole lot of impact. You know, so we can't diminish the importance of infrastructure. Secondly, creating an enabling environment is also related to what Johnson just discussed about creating the right kind of macroeconomic environment. Because it is the private sector. So what we are saying is that the frustration that the private sector is facing is too much, particularly small businesses.
Yes.
If we're able to remove all those frustrations, diminish them, it will increase opportunities for wealth creation. It will increase opportunities for employment, and ultimately it will reduce poverty. So that is the relationship. If you say government should go and be running businesses, I know, is it not government that is running the refineries?
Indeed, indeed.
For almost 8 years, have they produced anything? Look at where they have been importing 100% of our petroleum products, spending about $15 billion.
Okay, Dr. Dr. Yusuf, I beg your pardon. Let me bring in Mazi OKOROAFOR, who has been holding on. Good morning, Mazi.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Dr. Yusuf. My brother, the Reverend, is not frustrated. He's not. He just has said that he just saying his own willing is the right thing.
No, well, frustrated is not a negative. In every one of us, just about every Nigerian is frustrated, I think was the understanding we took from it.
Sir, we have not reached that stage. Look, 2020, the research work has as of 2020, over 140 million Nigerians were under poverty. That is now coming to 2022, we are talking about that it's around 183 million Nigerians facing this poverty. Look, you watch the program where this man was saying it, Eric Sinema, who owns Tomato, he said that CBN gives loans to foreigners based on normal rate of 440. But CBN gives loans to Nigerian manufacturers at the parallel market, 800 and something. That CBN that belongs to the federal government, how they give their own loan. Now, people refuse to go and collect. Now, NAFDAC and Son are the people sitting down there, local manufactured products now, they don't even back it up. They prefer to do all this to and create room for protection of foreign products, killing local manufacturers. Now, how would you be? Are these local manufacturers are ready to employ over 500,000 Nigerians in their own employment? But what is happening? They are being frustrated by Nigerian agencies. What are we talking? We should face the reality and stop blaming. The people in the government agencies are the people increasing poverty. We are not talking about the governors. Now tell me, the governor, you have come back, you have finished your tenure, 8 years. You want to go to Senate. To do what? Are you not going to, the one you have accumulated, how to sit down and do what? Create room and create industries for people with what you have accumulated, for the people in their place to settle down. You are going back to accumulate. Don't put that on one side. Now, you talk about senators, talk about House of Reps. Nigerians are the killers of themselves. Let nobody blame anybody. If you like, let us pray from now till December from 247. Nigeria's problem are being created by Nigerian problem. It must be solved by Nigerian problem. Unless people go to the office, collect their salary, collect their allowance, and settle down. That's all. But as long as people go to collect, grab. Poverty level is getting, look, as far as 1999 before COVID, frustrations are been written on people's faces. Depression are been written on people. You talk about political violence. You talk about killing. Why we say Christmas is around the corner? We are talking about killing violence. It is increasing. It cannot stop unless we do the reality that people go to the office and settle down, and government create an environment for local production. All these things we are talking stories. The people that carry Nigeria, what are they going to do? They are going to dump it for their own children. Children they have not born. What type of country are we talking about? We carry Bible, we carry only proof and deceiving ourselves. Nigerians are Nigerian problems. Nigeria must solve their problems now or never. Let us face the reality and stop blaming everybody. Everybody is part and parcel of this problem. Either we solve it now or never. Everybody will perish on it. God bless all of us.
Amen. Thank you very much, Mazi Okorafor. Angry as well. Who will not be angry? I mean, when Johnson, when Dr. Muda Yusuf sort of explained it quite dramatically and truthfully, that about, what, 35 years ago, you needed less than 10,000 naira to buy a brand new car. I mean, that, as he was saying, as he said at the time, that was not centuries ago. Johnson, that very notion that there are kids in their, well, they're not kids anymore, in their 30s who can't possibly grasp what that means, that there was a time when if you had 10,000 naira, Peugeot Automobile of Nigeria, you'd get something like maybe the top drawer, one of the top drawer 504s or 505s. Till today, when you get these tiny little puny cars that you can't even say 1 million naira will buy. Apart from corporate organizations, very few people buy brand new cars. What people are doing now is fairly used. So it might be a far place away from the kind of poverty we're talking about, but it does give an indication, doesn't it, as to the state we're in and the extent of the work that is necessary. They say government is a continuum. Well, whoever comes in next, he has a heck of a job on his hands. I hope Mr. Johnson.
Yes, Uncle, you know, one of the things I keep saying, is that the Nigerian youths today are actually having a raw deal. I've been given a raw deal by the leadership of this country. I mean, if you cast your mind back to the period you are talking of, in the 80s, people were buying Peugeot car for 5,000 naira.
That's right. Brand new.
505.
Evolution and all of that.
Brand new for 5,000 naira or thereabout. Yes, but unfortunately, when I say Nigerian youth are dictated in relates to the upcoming election, I can understand them because the reality of the matter is that there's nobody in Nigeria today who will get a job in Nigeria to buy a new car in his lifetime unless we change the macroeconomic environment, unless we do a dramatic turnaround in the economy. And we've seen consistently in my lifetime, every condition they can deteriorate. Personal income deteriorate, standard of health care deteriorate, standard of security deteriorate. Every facet of human life, Nigerians have been deteriorating. So I can relate with everybody. I am as angry as any of us. And like you rightly pointed out, the future every Nigerian has every justification to be angry. So when you see the youths very angry, very agitated, asking for a change in the status quo, one can relate with them. Reality is that this country has gone through a series of bad leadership. It is not a God-foisted condition on us. The situation we're going through now is a human-made situation. Countries, if you look at a country like China, China has become the second biggest economy in the world. China in the 60s was in the same situation with Nigeria. If you look at our per capita income, Nigeria was a few dollars better than China in the 50s. 60s, we are still doing better than China in terms of per capita income.
Indeed.
The worst case is that if you even look at a country like Vietnam, today Vietnam is the manufacturing hub in the world. Almost all Nike products are manufactured in Vietnam. If you go to major shops in Europe, the products they are manufactured in Vietnam. In my youth, when I was a teenager, we talk of Vietcong, the Vietnam War, and Vietnam was known as one of the worst countries to live in the world then. But over these past 30 years or thereabout, gotten leadership right, and they've been able to fix our economy and fix our society. We have seen the story. I talked about security. I mean, as a young man, I used to drive from Kano to Guzo to attend wedding, and we leave Guzo by 8 p.m. and drive back to Kano. You cannot drive from Kano to Bichi on today.
Okay.
Even in the
it has gone bad again. The audio has gone a bit wonky again. I'm so sorry about that, Johnson CHUKWU. Dr. Muda Yusuf, to sort of come to you and to round off because we have very, very little time left. Depressing as the figures are, annoying, because you can see some of them, a lot of the viewers that called in were quite angry, and it's a frustration of, we didn't do anything, and especially when you look at the leadership that Johnson CHUKWU was saying, that the truth being said, we have suffered through, less than exemplary leadership. Well, that very leadership, there's no indication whatsoever of the situation, because you see the government is very, very big, it's opulent, all sorts of entourages. There's no indication that we have a situation where we need to, tighten our belt or anything like that. Well, perhaps the next administrations going forward will find a way to do it. Give me your concluding thoughts on this, Dr. Yusuf, in terms of what the future now portends. Okay, I understand that Dr. Yusuf is no more there, but then let me just thank him for what he did say and sort of the enlightenment that he brought to bear on the subject. Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise and former DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And also to our great friend, Mr. Johnson CHUKWU, CEO COWRY Assets. Time will not permit us to really continue on this, but thank you very much for the enlightenment that you bring to this concept. And as you said, I'm happy that you supported Nigerians and that Nigerians are angry. Well, you said you yourself, and they can't remove you. Even as opulent as you look, you are saying that you are still angry. Thank you very much, Johnson CHUKWU. Thank you very much, Johnson CHUKWU, for coming on the program. So that's our program today. Please join us on Monday for a fresh edition. I am Iyori Folare, and do have a great weekend.